I am presenting with a few other people a posthumous room naming proposal. This falls in line with Huntsville City Schools Board Policy 2.9.1, naming in recognition of distinction, and the request was to name an existing room within HCS Central Office in honor of Annie Ruth Brown Mathews. I didn't expect to get emotional. So. Ms. Mathews was recognized as a distinguished education professional. She had over 40 years impacting education, as you see, across North Alabama, beginning with 7 years in Lauderdale County, 4 years in Madison County, 25 years in Huntsville City Schools, which I was there for part of that, and then 4 years as an adjunct instructor at Alabama A&M University. She had many accomplishments throughout her lifetime, but her most notable accomplishment for Huntsville City Schools was being one of the first African-American educators to integrate Huntsville City Schools, namely Huntsville High School, in 1970. And you'll see a summary of her professional education here with bachelor's and master's degrees. Her scope of courses taught were biology, chemistry, general sciences, and physiology. And she's remembered as a teacher, a mentor, a community activist, and a barrier breaker. And to quote one of her many fans, Ms. Mathews courageously spearheaded integration for students, educators, and the community as a whole through her unwavering commitment to the promise of education for all in the face of overwhelming barriers. I'll now turn it over to a few community members who would like to share some personal reflections.
I want to say it's a great privilege to speak to you about Annie Ruth Matthews. I worked with Annie Ruth at Huntsville High School for 14 years till she retired. And it's truly an honor to stand here and talk about my friendship with such a gifted and gracious lady, and she was. Our president, Carlos Mathews, was a student at Huntsville High at that time. Dr. Ina Smith, who was emotional, was also one of my students at Huntsville High at that time. But Annie Ruth was something else. She was wonderful. She was filled with joy. That's what she was, filled with joy. It overflowed in the classroom, in the hallways. She was something else in faculty meetings. But she was a teacher of biology. She taught life, and she was filled with curiosity, and her students felt that. I can all remember her at Huntsville High upstairs in what I call the science hallway. Her classroom faced toward the courtyard, and we had terrazzo floors, and I could always hear these crisp clippity, clippity, clippity coming down the hall because she always wore these perfectly high heels. She was always very well dressed. She had these high heels on, and we could hear her coming before we saw her. And here she was, always poised to perfection. She would remind us that she was a majorette at Alabama A&M, and she remained poised throughout her life. And like I said, she was always dressed to perfection, but when she slipped on her white chemistry coat, we knew it was a serious day in the classroom. And my biggest, like I said, she was filled with energy and laughter, but every spring, this was what I remember, boxes and boxes of frogs would come to the front office, and this little formaldehyde smell would come around, and this was a big event for everyone because Miss Mathews loved it. And it became, I know it sounds like dissecting frogs, but to us it was a big event because Annie Ruth enjoyed it so much. And because her magic in the classroom, not only did everybody in the entire school know about the frogs and what was happening in biology, but so did her students, and she made science come alive for everybody, truly. And my own son-in-law was one of her students several times because he liked her so much. He said she made science fun and easy. And if a classroom's full of energy and it's fun and easy, they're going to keep coming back. So Miss Mathews was more than a teacher. She was a model for her students, a source of joy, a bright light at Huntsville High. And I think her spirit remains with every story, every laughter, every class she taught at Huntsville High School when she was there. And I will always remember her confidence, her style, her high heels, and her laughter, and above all, her joy. So thank you for letting me share my time with Miss Annie Ruth. Thank you.
I'd like to take a moment to honor the late Miss Annie Ruth Matthews, an extraordinary adjunct professor who left a lasting impact on the non-traditional students like me. Her presence alone commanded respect, and she earned it. When you stepped in her classroom, you knew not to be late and to come prepared to work. But beyond her structure and her high expectations, Miss Mathews brought warmth, wisdom, and an unwavering belief in her students' potential. Her dedication, patience, and encouragement made a profound difference in my academic journey. She didn't just teach, she truly understood the unique challenges some of us face, and she offered guidance every step of the way. Miss Mathews embodied the very best of what education should be, helping every student succeed, regardless of their background or circumstances. So to name this room in her honor is just a small way to say thank you for the lessons, the inspiration, and the legacy she leaves behind.
Good afternoon. It's definitely an honor and a pleasure to be here to speak on the behalf of Miss Annie Ruth Matthews. I knew Miss Matthews not only as my biology teacher, but I knew her growing up in church. And as Carlos and I would play together and run under the pews together at church, we formed a great relationship with Miss Matthews. But again, I'm here tonight to talk about her as my biology teacher. And I'd like to use an acrostic of the last name Mathews to speak about Mrs. Annie Ruth Matthews. So when I think of Mrs. Matthews, the letter M, mother and motivator. Mrs. Matthews is the mother of school board president Carlos Mathews, to whom she loved and doted over. She also was a mother to many students she taught. She reinforced the values of honesty, integrity, empathy, and educational competency. A, artistic. Mrs. Matthews found creative ways to engage her students. She made the lessons applicable to each student's learning style. T, trailblazing teacher. Mrs. Matthews taught at Council High School, which is an all-African-American school during segregation. When the schools were integrated, she went on to be one of the first African-American teachers in the Huntsville City school system, where she served for over 40 years. She served as a role model in the community, showing that African-American teachers could thrive and excel when given the opportunity. H, humorous. Mrs. Matthews would always put a smile on her students' face with her quick wit and funny stories. E, educated. Mrs. Matthews was graduated from Rosedale High School in Birmingham in 1956, an all-black high school during the era of segregation. Mrs. Matthews went on to attend Alabama Agriculture and Mechanical College in Huntsville, where she earned a degree in secondary education in 1959. During her college years, she was active on campus. She performed as a majorette in the band and was a member of the Delta Delta chapter of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. These experiences reflected her early passion for education, leadership, and community involvement. W, wise. Mrs. Mathews, who not only poured educational wisdom into her students in the classroom, but outside the classroom as an advisor and a mentor. S, singer. Mrs. Mathews loved to sing. She could be heard singing in the hallways, and the classroom. One of the songs she would sing is All God's Children Have Shoes. On Sunday mornings, you could find her in the soprano section at First Missionary Baptist Church. In closing, Mrs. Mathews made an indelible impact on the lives of thousands of young people in this community and abroad. Some of her students went on to be engineers, doctors, nurses, lawyers, teachers, professors, councilmen, business owners, military and fire service personnel, and me, a Huntsville Police Department retired captain. Because of her commitment to education, excellence, and love for the community, I strongly endorse the naming of a room in the memory of Mrs. Annie Ruth Matthews. Thank you.